the other that neck of the gallbladder, hold it down on the top. Separate them down. Right. So what you Jamie and I was working on the reward for that. And all this buzzing stuff you can see on the sheet down to the gallbladder.
Really did it.
And bring it back to the treatment. Years later, that's information you need to process, right? Because once you fill out higher cost, then we'll pull to going right away with that. So you want to take the all that down. You don't know details. Oh, well, beside all that, sure. So I still wonder if we're overlooking by selecting high risk of being, sure, sometimes they don't have full history, so it's not going to say you get time. It's got to be some selective use of interval where yes.
So it didn't even, yeah, that's exactly what it is. So they couldn't. No ethics. That'll be sure, and then
I've been expecting 30 years.
that's you. I don't know, I could be. All right.
I'm here. Can you hear me? Have you guys enabled screen sharing for me, please?
Yes. My partner's gotten it. So I'm just gonna watch it. Maybe we'll change the order. I sent her a reminder. Yeah, he's unhiding. He's unhiding. Yeah, I said what? Unhiding. Oh. Yeah, it's nice. Start herding people back in. Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Hi, Mike. I'm
Hey, Bob.
having trouble with my video here.
Hello? You want to sit up here? Or you don't want to sit up here?
I'll do whatever you want. Happy to sit up there. Sit down.
Yeah, that way you can. Yeah, you don't have to sit up front. You can sit up front plenty. Oh, good. Excellent. All right. I think we're going to go ahead and get started with our next session. We'll let people, everyone's getting a little bit of coffee, warming up a little bit, kind of getting settled. We typically have a ACS session as part of the Southwestern Surgical because we're ACS members. ACS is our advocacy group. They're our educational group. The college is, you know, they're the ones who understand about surgeons. We like to have representatives from the college here. As many of you already know, this has been a jam-packed couple of weeks. There have been just meetings of all kind, including the ACS advocacy and leadership session that is going on in Washington, D.C., literally as we speak. So because the people we wanted to have are tied up, we have first Dr. Michael Sutherland, who is going to be joining us. He's going to be virtual but live, and will be available for questions. So for those of you who don't know, Dr. Sutherland is the new Member Services Director. He has been somebody, as I'm looking at his bio, he's been a member of the college since 1998. Joined as a resident member, then he became involved with RAS and was the chair of that group. He was the vice chair of the chair. He's been involved with trauma as a regional and state committees there. He's gotten involved with any number of things, I guess is what I'm going to say, throughout the college. The other important thing with Dr. Sutherland is he serves in general surgery coding and reimbursement. He has also served in the U.S. Air Force Medical Corps and has been a military consultant to the Surgeon General for thoracic surgery. He's served overseas. He's involved in many things, received many awards. I could really take up the whole time just reading his bio, but I think what we really want to hear from Dr. Sutherland, can you see us? Can you hear us?
I sure can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, is that loud enough, everybody, or can we? Good? All right. And we'll have the opportunity to ask him questions when he is done. What you need to do, though, will be to come up to the microphone so he can hear you. So without any further ado, I am pleased, proud, and honored to introduce Dr. Sutherland.
Well, thank you so very much. It really is a pleasure to be there virtually. As you mentioned, we are in the middle of the Leadership and Advocacy Conference, and those conflicting priorities prohibited me from making the trip out to be there with you in person. But it is important for us to talk about what's going on in the American College of Surgeons, and what I'm going to try to do in the next 20-25 minutes or so is really share with you an update of some of the things that are going on that are available to you as members, that are opportunities and strategic initiatives that we're taking at the college in order to enhance the practice of surgery across the country. Going back to the start of the organization over 110 years ago, we have been aligned with a motto to heal all with skill and trust. There we go. Heal all with skill and trust. And this is a very apropos motto for what we do as the College of Surgeons. And as many of you know, the founding principles of the college were based around enhancing the quality of surgery and enhancing the education of the surgeon, and in providing a better surgical outcomes for our patients. This has really stood the test of time, and I'm going to briefly kind of go through the 5 pillars of the college and what's going on in those as we really work to demonstrate the factors that surround what we hold dear in how we heal all with skill and trust. The pillars are very involved in this, and that motto really ties us to what's going on across these pillars. In quality, we're talking about the quality campaign and our ability to share across all aspects of surgical care the quality initiatives that are necessary to show that we are focused on improving how we improve the care delivery. That really ties to the skill and to the part of the motto. Education is all about that skill as well, and many of you have participated in educational programs brought forward by the college. In fact, the CME for your event there today in California is a function of our Division of Education's CME offerings. So we really are focused on bringing about collaboration with other organizations and really moving quickly to identify ways to deliver educational content in a manner that the physician and the surgeons are looking for. My division, Member Services, is really involved in every aspect of the college. We look at every stage of a surgeon's development. We have programs for everything from medical school to residents, young surgeons, every demographic across the American College of Surgeons, including the practicing surgeon and those looking to retire. We want to develop programs and present opportunities for participation in programs that make your life easier because you've elected to be a member of the college. Every year, when we do surveys asking members what's important, advocacy comes out, and under Christian Chalgen's leadership, we have one of the best, if not the best, healthcare advocacy platform in the country. Our opinion is highly valued. Our leaders in Congress reach out to us as the American College of Surgeons looking for our opinion, and we want to be there to represent all in our motto, be there to represent all of our patients, all of our members, and ensure that the information that is making it to our legislators is representative of what is necessary for our specialty and all of the specialties of the House of Surgery to take the best possible care and offer the best possible access to all members of our communities. Communication is another aspect of what we focus on, We have two new directors, an internal director and an external director of communications, Natalie Bowden and Brian Edwards. And we are focused on getting the messaging out both to our members about what is available and what is going on in the college so that you can stay abreast in of the opportunities for participation, as well as engaging with media partners and other facilities, other organizations and federal agencies about what it is that is important from the American College of Surgeons, and how the label FACS does stand for that quality and does stand for the ability to take care of all with skill and trust. I'm going to go briefly into these pillars. Communications really looks at, there's been a lot of things that have happened recently. And if you haven't seen the new iteration of the bulletin, either electronically or the print version, I encourage you to take a look at it. This is a complete redesign of what's available. That's timely updates on ACS activities, really an opportunity for people to share stories about things that they have done in their community or in their practice, which are representative of the work that we do as surgeons, as well as some educational opportunities, including CME eligible activities. The labeling and the presentation through pictures and engagement through stories is really different than what the bulletin has been in the past, and it's been very well received. We also have podcasts. There's 3 podcasts that are have some elements that are CME eligible. If you choose to consume your information in this format, I encourage you to check these out. They're available through any of the places that you would typically download a podcast. We are endeavoring through our division of communications to identify opportunities to meet our fellows where they prefer and where they interact at their convenience. In effort to do that, you may have noticed that we've rolled out a new website. It's getting to be about 6 months, 7 months old. That's out there with a totally different look and a reorganized way to help you identify the content that you need that's relevant to you. Coming up in the very near future, we're actually doing beta testing right now and anticipate rolling this out in the next month or two, where the dashboard is personalized. And this is the first step of personalizing the content that comes to you as an individual. And whether that's you've just indicated that you have an interest in advocacy issues, or you are a urologist and have interest in urologic issues, or whatever it is that you've identified that is important to you, that we want to put that front and center in your web interactions so that you have the ability to see that and act on it as efficiently as possible. We're also going to have your information like your educational records, the community that you interact with, including your governors and your state chapter leaders, et cetera, all right there at a fingertip in order to help facilitate you being involved and being active in the college. Our membership services are expansive. We're really doing some interesting things in member services. There's currently a pilot for 3 years that offer no resident dues for the 2023 and 2024 cycle. And then we, again, in the 2024 to 2025 cycle. The first year went very well with that. There's no application fee for interns, and we have the ability for our program directors and the program managers to register the entire program in one place without having to submit individual applications in an effort to make that an easy process. This is really designed to engage residents in all specialties across the House of Surgery and share with them what the benefits of membership are, what they can get from that. Practice management resources are a huge piece of what we've been working on in that area. We've developed programs with the AMGA, MGMA, and AAMC to provide access to benchmarking compensation reports, not just to our resident members as they transition into practice, but also our staff, fellows and young fellows as they may be looking to change practice and help lower the barrier to accessing benchmark data. legal review of employment contracts with our partner Resolve is an available, economically feasible way in order to have an expert in healthcare contracts review your information and work with you as a partner to negotiate your contracts. The Career Connection is our job bank. It continues to be well subscribed and well filled with opportunities across the country. And our life insurance product and educational products for coding and reimbursement are also listed in this area in the practice management section of the website. I encourage you to take a look at it. It's evolving. We're adding more things, and I expect that between now and Clinical Congress, we've got a couple, 3 more big products that we're going to be including in this area in order to provide at least a idea for people about what things they need and why they need them. Also, the opportunity to engage with partners that we've been fortunate enough to be able to work with. Surgeon well-being is a huge focus in America right now. Physician well-being is the bigger overarching area. And we're leading a new coalition on well-being with over 20 surgical organizations, looking at opportunities to identify not ways for the surgeon to mitigate their risk of burnout, but for their institutions to modify how they create an environment that is less prone for individuals to find themselves in a state of burnout. We're going to have a membership survey going out in May. We really want you to participate in that, help inform that process. Keep an eye out for that in the near future. But most importantly, the biggest opportunity for you to engage as an individual at the college is through your local chapter. Those are the groups that are there to support you in the community, you in your state, and you as a surgeon among your peers. This is your first interaction with them, may be at the point where have been when you had your interview for membership. For those of you that are residents and medical students and your associate fellows, that you're already engaged, and many of these chapters have opportunities for leadership and the ability for you to help enhance the offerings of the chapter. We strongly encourage participation there. And if you have questions about who your chapter leaders are or how you can get involved, you can always reach out to us at acschapters@facs.org with any questions. Education is a huge aspect of what we do at the American College of Surgeons, and anyone who's been to Clinical Congress is very personally aware of the breadth of the educational opportunities that are there. That being said, we've also recognized that it is a problem in today's practice to take a week off from work and go to an educational meeting. For years, our Clinical Congress has extended into Thursday. And what we have done this year is we have compressed, without giving up any content, all of the material that was in the previous iterations into a 3-day format that starts with the opening ceremonies on Monday morning, after convocation Sunday night, and then ends on Wednesday evening with the tour of the Taste of the City events. Registration for Clinical Congress opens in early May, around May 9th. Keep an eye out for that. We look forward to seeing you in Boston and think that you'll be very impressed with the quality of the educational program and the new format that leads to a more efficient use of time. Again, this year we'll have a hybrid format available so that any products or any programming that you don't get to or is conflicting with something else on your schedule will be available to you afterwards, starting within 24 to 48 hours, and you'll be able to claim CME credit for that educational opportunity. So there's hundreds of hours of CME that will be available, and we're looking forward to seeing you there. CSAP 18 was just released. New CSAP 18 Advanced is coming this summer. For those of you that need more exposure and want a more robust experience than what you're able to get from CSAP, I think CSAP is a phenomenal product and has been a great resource in my practice. I'm looking forward to seeing what CSAP 18 looks like, because how do you improve on something that's really great? It'll be an interesting opportunity to take a look at that. DEI is another area of the college that has been an important focus. And our goal in DEI has really been to identify ways to create that equity without compromising in any way our commitment to surgical excellence. And Dr. Bonnie Simpson Mason is going to talk to you after I will. So I'm going to skip any great detail on this, but you can learn more by snapping a picture of this QR code, and that will supplement the information that she is going to present as well. Quality is the foundation of the college, as I mentioned earlier, and we are in the process of rolling out more and more programs in the quality space. All of you are familiar with the trauma program and the cancer program, but you can see here we have multiple accreditation programs with optimal resource manuals for those programs. We've just introduced the general surgery, emergency general surgery program, the vascular program, and very soon you'll be seeing general thoracic surgery and high-risk gastrointestinal surgery as new accreditation and verification programs in partnership with other societies that are interested in this space. Collaboration and engagement with other societies such as AAST for the emergency general surgery course, SVS for the vascular course, et cetera, are going to be the hallmark of how we continue to bring forward the best possible quality programs that are designed to fulfill the mission of our quality goals. NSQIP continues to be a very strong program with over 700 sites, 20% of which are international. Our quality verification program, based on the document to the right, the Red Book, the Optimal Resources for Surgical Quality and Safety, is a new program that has been rolled out and really looks at an entire institution's healthcare delivery system and surgical quality and safety programs. 25 centers have been verified across the country as of now, and we are always looking to increase that number and grow that the dissemination of the program. There's plenty of evidence-based practice guidelines and case studies and tools available to programs in order to achieve the highest possible quality and demonstrate that through the verification program. Cancer programs are continuing to be a very strong component of what we do at the college. And you can see here, there's multiple operative standards that are already released, volumes 1 and 2, and volume 3 is in development in order to round out a substantial number of the common malignancies and their surgical management. In addition to those, there are several programmatic standards. 10 are currently available in process. Breast, melanoma, and colon are currently available. You can see we have new that are programs and standards that are forthcoming in pancreas, thyroid, lung, gastric, adrenal, sarcoma, and rectal cancer. So this is a very popular area and an opportunity for involvement across the college. Trauma programs continue to be very important and a very active part of our quality area. We are currently here on the Hill in Washington, D.C., advocating for the National Trauma Emergency Preparedness System, which includes essentially a national trauma system and what that looks like in the components. Violence prevention and the reduction of firearm injuries is an important aspect of what we are doing in the injury prevention space through the Committee on Trauma. And this has been approached in the most deliberate way with an attention to being focused on the data and areas of consensus. And I know that Dr. Stewart is talking on this topic, and I don't want to steal any of his hard work, and I look forward to hearing what he has to say because he always speaks with this with such passion and clear thinking that I will reserve that for his presentation. Stop the Bleed is another program that you're all familiar with for the college. We currently have over 2.6 million people trained worldwide. We're seeing that number continue to grow. We've had the state of California enact legislation that requires Stop the Bleed kits in new buildings. The city of Chicago requires these kits in all publicly owned buildings. And we've recently had engagement with the Chicago Cubs, where they have added Stop the Bleed kits to the ballpark and have engaged in training of the people that work in the ballpark in order to be able to deliver this care. This is a process that has been growing very fast, and we are proud of what we're doing leading in this space, and look forward to opportunities across the country to enhance the number of states that have this legislation and engage with their citizens with opportunities at different venues in order to provide both the education and the access to the equipment. Rural trauma has also been an important aspect of what we're focused on. 30 million people lack timely access to a level 1 or level 2 trauma center across the country. It increases the rates of preventable death, and this is also part of what's going on in the national trauma system, and looking at ways to fill these gaps and create opportunities through telehealth, teletrauma, or other networks in order to reach these patients within a timely period from when they're first injured. That being said, quality being a huge part of what we focus on, we have conferences, including the Quality and Safety Conference. You may have known this as the NSQIP conference in the past, but we've expanded the scope based on the number of quality programs that we have. It's July 10th through the 13th in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Registration should be opening in the next week or so, and we really look forward to you participating with us and the engagement of the staff in your hospitals that are already participating in the quality programs, coming to round out their experience in education regarding these programs. That leads me to a new campaign regarding the power of quality. The campaign is designed to leverage the credibility of the college in order to reach our hospital partners and to persuade surgeons, payers, and patients of the critical value of these programs. You know, one of the goals here is to have this program in every hospital across the country. And the only way that we're going to be successful there is if we are able to engage surgeons, payers, and patients, so that the patients demand it, the surgeons deliver on it, and the payers recognize it in their payment policies, so that we can leverage the power of quality in order to enhance the experience and outcomes of our patients. The primary stakeholders I've mentioned, and this is I mentioned a new program. We rolled this out Friday at the National Press Club, and we are working with Inova Fairfax in Virginia to be the first program to have this as part of their institution and their system. More hospitals will come this summer, and we look forward to bringing this to all hospitals, including the one that you work in. This is what that looks like, a quality surgical partner. There'll be a symbol, a diamond that you might see in the advertisements for a hospital, or in the waiting room in your office or your hospital's waiting rooms, and identifying partners that are committed to this level of quality, enhancing the reputation and the recognition of the American College of Surgeons as leading in this space. We've done research on this and identified that most people, given the choice of selecting a hospital for their surgery that was endorsed by the U.S. News and World Report compared to versus being endorsed by the American College of Surgeons, we stand out as a recognized authority in this survey group that would lead them to follow our recommendations preferentially. And we believe that that's a good start into this space, and by enhancing access to these programs and enhancing what we do with these programs, it will lead us further to be nationwide leaders in this promulgation of quality programs. Advocacy, I mentioned briefly, really focused on workforce shortages and the extent to which those are impacting our ability to deliver surgical care. There's a lot of things going on in that space. We talked about some of the trauma efforts. One aspect of what we are focused on here in Washington this week is Mission Zero, regarding a grant program that authorized $11.5 million to create partnership between the DoD military and civilian programs for trauma readiness. In addition, cancer research, firearm injury prevention, and fully funding the National Healthcare Workforce Commission are items that we are actively advocating for among the other 30 or 40 different items that we're actually tracking and working with congressional leaders and staff in order to engage on. The summit is, you can see here, ongoing. And some of the specific asks are going to be stabilizing and reforming the Medicare payment system, prior authorization relief, and funding those items that we talked about. So reflecting back, we started this whole talk with talking about healing all with skill and trust. We have 87,000 members worldwide in 144 countries with 123 chapters. 50 million patient records are tracked through our registries to improve patient care. And we have over 2,500 hospitals partnered with us already and participating in our quality programs. We are setting the standard for how to heal all with skill and trust and continue to strive to enhance how we deliver that care. There are many, many more things that I could talk about. I encourage you to mark your calendars for the Quality and Safety Conference that I mentioned earlier in June, the Clinical Congress in Boston in October, and the TQIP conference for those of you that participate in the care of the injured patient in December in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm happy to answer any questions as we're wrapping up the Leadership and Advocacy Conference here in 2023. We'll be back in Washington, D.C. next April 13th through the 16th. And barring any conflicts, I would strongly encourage you to join us at the Leadership and Advocacy Conference as well. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I know we covered a lot of information. I'm happy to clarify any points or answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sutherland. I was just thinking back to when I was a young surgeon just out of training, and after a year or so, my senior colleague said, "Oh, well, you should join. You should become an FACS." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "Because that's what you do." And I think you have just given us a very convincing demonstration and information about how the college is ever so much more than just something you join because you were a surgeon. And the question I would pose, and throw it open to questions, I know Dr. Sutherland is glad to address any and all, is if somebody has a question or concern and doesn't quite know who, what, when, why, or how to get started, because it is the college, how do you recommend they, number one, if they have a question or concern, who to contact? And number two, if they want to get more involved, what would you recommend?
So who to contact is easy. We try to keep this as simple as possible. MS, that's Member Services, just ms@facs.org is the easiest way to reach out to us. That goes directly to a mailbox in our office that's monitored by 3 of my staff, and we get that message to wherever it needs to go. If we can handle it inside of Member Services, great. If not, we're going to send you a warm handoff and pass you along to the next person that is best equipped to answer that question and provide you with the information that you need. So nobody should ever feel like they don't know how to get in touch with us. That's easy. If MS for member services is difficult, the postmaster mailbox does the same thing. Getting involved is very, very easy. Getting involved is simply a matter of stepping up and saying, I want to participate And the best place to do that is in your chapter. If your chapter is active, they're continually looking for people to help with different educational programs or surgical jeopardy or different activities that are designed to engage with members. Our chapter offices get these questions plenty of times, and we help people engage with their chapters if they don't know who to reach out to. The personalized website will help in the future because it'll have your chapter officers very clearly demonstrated that right there so that you can reach out directly to them. But if you're interested in getting involved and don't know who to call, don't know who your chapter leaders are, please reach out to us at ms.facs.org, and we'll get that over to our Luke Moreau in our domestic chapters, and he'll be happy to help put you in touch with the people in your chapter that can create opportunities for you to be an active participant.
Thank you very much. So what you're saying is every member matters.
Absolutely. That is really what we're saying. And our goal is to demonstrate to you that we have a value proposition that you can't avoid being a part of, that we're offering things to you that you can't get anywhere else, that are either discounted or as a part of your membership, that really make a difference in how you deliver care in your community and how you run your practice, whether it's an employed practice or a private practice or whatever your circumstance is.
Great. Questions? Okay. All right. We have a question or a comment.
Kind of both.
And-
This is John Akar from Omaha. In regards to the quality programs of the college, and by the way, thank you for an excellent summary and pointing out all the benefits of membership. But in regards to the quality programs, there is a tool that's been afloat now for a number of years that many of us think have a major impact on quality, but not much attention has been given to it in regards to whether it actually helps or impairs quality. And I'm talking about the electronic medical record. I wonder if the American College of Surgeons has garnered any partnerships or collaborations with other organizations like the American Medical Informatics Association, or if we have any other activity that looks at the impact that the EMR really has on our practice as surgeons.
So we have a committee in the Board of Governors that deals with practice, the environment of practice, and that's been looked at to some extent. There's always an opportunity for additional research and additional investigation in that space. But suffice to say, it's a little bit of a mixed bag, and everybody has their own experience with the electronic medical record that they can share. Our goal is to ensure that if we're using the electronic medical record for clinical purposes, how can we leverage that in order to help with other aspects like abstracting data into registries and things along those lines to reduce the burden on our systems and on our healthcare providers and healthcare delivery systems to participate in these other programs, which we know are beneficial and have been shown time and time again to deliver improvements in outcomes based on risk-adjusted methodologies and assessments. So, I'm happy to talk with you offline about it in terms of what other opportunities might be there and how we might get to those places. But it is any kind of tool that's that pervasive in medicine, we're definitely paying attention to and interested in how it affects what's going on at the bedside when our fellows are delivering care.
Thank you very much.
All right. Applause for Dr. Sutherland. Virtual applause. Okay.
We have Dr. Mason coming up next. Great. Now, so we have the pleasure of having Dr. Bonnie Simpson Mason in our presence virtually. Dr. Mason is the Vice President of Diversity, equity and inclusion since 2020 at the ACGME, but recently has gone over to our side also in the surgery realm. In 2022, Dr. Mason joined the American College of Surgeons as the inaugural medical director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And she's here to talk to us today about the initiatives of the ACS in that area. So thank you, Dr. Mason.
Thank you so much. I hope everyone can hear me clearly. Dr. Sutherland and I are both here at the Leadership and Advocacy Summit in Washington, D.C., and it's a pleasure to be with you virtually. Can you all hear me okay? I can see you on the dais. Can you all hear me? Thumbs up? Okay, wonderful. Great. So I will go ahead and share my screen. Perfect. So once again, it's really a pleasure to be with you. I've been in the role as the inaugural medical director for just over 15 months now. And we, along with we, meaning the director of the office, C. Armstead, and myself, are really excited about the support that we have received from the college across the country in initiating and innovating in this space of DEI. So as an orthopedic surgeon, it's also really great to be with a larger body of general surgeons and all of the subspecialties they're in forwarding this work together. So the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is just under 2 years old. We were brought forth based on recommendations from the Regential Task Force. The Board of Regents got together early in 2020, built a task force that put forth these 12 critical enabling habits that they wanted to achieve. And one of these goals identified was to build and staff an Office of Diversity, now Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. It's been this has essentially been our North Star and our guiding principles in terms of what we have sought to put in place from a strategic perspective with regards to DEI across the college. Certainly our commitment is to make sure that we are creating a culture that is supportive, equitable and inclusive for everyone within our workforce. And I'll revisit this concept shortly to the benefit of our patients. We want to make it clear that this work will take some time to accomplish. And we are taking this time-based strategic approach to the work that we are developing in DEI. This still encompasses our first 2 years of being in place. This foundational stage has allowed us to do quite a bit of work assessing and inventorying the work that's already taken place with great momentum, I might add. And then moving into our transitional and transformational phases, that's where we want to see a lot more integration, engagement, and then moving our culture forward towards the goal that I mentioned really quickly. Now, as a DEI practitioner, having been in the space of physician and surgeon development for about 16, 18 years prior to moving over to the ACGME and now here at the ACS, I think it's important for us to set the stage such that we understand conceptually and get on the same page around these key terms that we hear used in this space so often. So we know that for the first couple of decades of this work, starting right around 2000 or so, the emphasis in DEI really just focused on diversity itself. What we now know is that it is important to take equitable steps, creating inclusive environments and a culture of belonging will support everyone within the workforce, especially those who are from diverse backgrounds, and ultimately to the benefit of all patients as well. So these efforts occur in a continuum, such that the more that we are able to implement equitable practices, and I'll give you some examples of those, in order to create this environment of belonging, then everyone within that workforce will thrive. That really is the basis of the definition of equity that we are adopting here in our DEI work throughout the college. It's been our charge from the Board of Regents as well as from Dr. Turner to make sure that we are integrating this work as opposed to adding it on as an appendage. And so what that means is, how do we make this equity concept make sense for all surgeons? Well, Dr. Kamara Jones, whom you see pictured here in the bottom right of your screen, puts forward this core definition that we've adapted to surgery. And I think this is the definition that really we can all agree is the rising tide that lifts all boats. And Dr. Jones posits that equity is the assurance of conditions of an optimal environment, an optimized workplace, be it a surgical environment, clinical environment, educational environment. So we want to optimize the workplace to support everyone within the workforce. Those are our students, our residents, our surgeons, our staff. So that entire workforce would certainly be supported and encouraged and feel, best
Dr.
able.
Mason Simpson, I'm going to rudely interrupt you because we're just realizing your slides aren't up here
Is that right? So I've been talking away.
for a bit. Yeah,
I'm on a roll, y'all. Hey,
I was actually admiring you because, all of us have become so PowerPoint dependent that I was actually admiring you talking without using PowerPoint. But, so when you referenced something on the slide, I think we all suddenly realized we weren't seeing what you were instructing us. We're still learning, but.
okay, all right. Well, thank you for the
I
interruption.
apologize for interrupting. Here we go.
I certainly would have kept going. Thank
There we
you.
go.
Let's see here from current slide. How about that?
There we go.
Okay, perfect. I will.
I don't think, I was going to say, I don't think you need to start from the beginning because but absolutely. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Well, these all reference what I was speaking about. So let me actually start here. So here is the conceptual wheel of the relationship of DE&I that I was referring to, these equity practices that we want to start with, implement such that we build these inclusive cultures and environments, everyone within the workforce. I was referencing Dr. Kamara Jones in the bottom of this slide here. So this is Dr. Jones, former president of the American Public Health Association, just really one of the major key educators in the space of DEI and anti-racism across the country. But again, this is her definition of equity, where we are looking to optimize the educational and surgical environment, everyone within the workforce. Dr. Jones states very clearly, and this was the first definition of equity, that once I listened to it, read it, and reread it, that I could get my mind around, even having done this work for 15, 16 years prior to moving into the executive role. And Dr. Jones states that we can achieve this optimized workplace for everyone within the workforce if we value all individuals and populations equally. That means giving an opportunity for everyone to have a voice to share their experience, and to make sure that we, value their voice, everyone's voice, that we also recognize and rectify historical and current injustices based on data and evidence. That is, not just putting our heads in the sand, but let's look at what the data is actually telling us, because we do have decades of data at this point. And then most importantly, that we're willing to provide resources according to need without judgment. This is the equitable approach at supporting our students, our learners, our faculty, such that they can show up and feel that they belong. And so really just a quick example that I love to use, and I'll move quickly. There is a difference between equality and that which is equitable. Here on the left, we see 3 plants that are alive, but are they thriving? Not really. But let's look, the provision of resources is equal. Some might consider this to be fair. The same amount of light and hydration are being offered to the cactus, the flower, and to the fern. But if we look on the right side, we see that the three plants actually are thriving, they're prospering. They are living their authentic best lives. Why? Because the cactus is receiving more light than hydration. The flower is receiving medium light, medium hydration, and the fern is receiving a low amount of light, but maximum hydration. They are receiving the resources they need in order to grow, in order to proliferate to the best of their ability, according to their own needs. So we can look at this as an opportunity to say, what do the individuals in our organization need? Not that they don't have the capacity to thrive, but are we supporting them in the way that they can best thrive in our environments? And once we do that, once again, we create these cultures of belonging where inclusivity is the key. This increases access and a sense of belonging and access to learning, access to care to the maximum benefit of our patients. This authentic and maximum performance environment allows us in surgery to then deliver the quality of care in a safe environment that we are all looking to thrive in. This is the ultimate goal of this work. And just want to reinforce what Dr. Sutherland said earlier, and at no point does any of this work lean, suggest, or even hint that our highest priority is anything but surgical excellence. This has been, and will always be the goal of the college, and that is to maintain surgical excellence. So what are we doing to address these issues? We're certainly looking at the work in DEI and anti-racism through a paradigm of accountability. Who's responsible for making sure that our culture shifts? Well, we know culture is a leadership guided set of activities that is time-based and strategically managed. So within our leaders and our leadership, starting with the Board of Regents and the Board of Governors, we're looking to make sure that we are implementing some education and training programs such that we can institute at the organizational level throughout our quality and safety programs as well, equity standards, looking to support our surgeon members, both those in practice as well as those who are learners and who benefits at the end of the day with all of the work that we're looking to grow and benefit is certainly our patients. So that is the ultimate goal when we create these environments that are supportive. The patients benefit most of all. So some of the work we've done in the first year, and I'll move through this relatively quickly, is to assess and take an inventory both internally with our staff, but also too with our members around the work that has happened in this space overall. What was really attractive for me in coming into this role was that there was a bounty of work which had already been launched, from educational curricula through recruitment and retention programs, as well as patient and surgeon outreach programs at all levels of the college between our chapters, but also more centrally with the Board of Regents, the Board of Governors DEI pillar, and the several work groups herein, the Healthcare Disparities Committee, and several of our member services committees as well. The quality and safety team led by Dr. Clifford Cole had also been doing a significant amount of work, not necessarily in the equity space, but that is one of the key initiatives that we have identified and are acting upon moving forward. We've been able to bring some of our leadership together to do some learning and build our level of understanding and skills in this space through our educational and alignment collaboratives, through a flipped classroom model. And then something very interesting that I recognize as a vulnerability for the college was that moving into Clinical Congress of 2022, we had over 20 DEI related talks, and some of our board members, based on some of the feedback that we've received nationally, which hasn't always been so supportive, and we understand everyone doesn't agree, and that's okay too. But our Board of Regents members started asking, what do we need to do to make sure that our educational programming at Clinical Congress goes off without a hitch? And we were able to develop our safety and response training and protocols for at least half of the speakers who were speaking on DEI related sessions last year. This is now going to be a training and protocol series that will be rolled out across all 5 of our larger conferences at the college. And we're really excited about being able to meet the needs of our members such that we can have a space where we're talking about even the hottest and most delicate and sensitive topics in a way that is collegial, respectful, and invites everyone to the table to share their opinions. One of the other big projects and deliverables that we're working on, starting with the Board of Governors who initiated this toolkit back in 2021, I believe, is now our ACS DEI resource and implementation lexicon and toolkit. This will be a digital resource that will contain over 30 chapters and contributions from 17 aligned groups, some of the abbreviations for the groups you can see here on the right. But we have over 50 surgeon authors who are now contributing to our toolkit as a source of information as to what we need to do in this DEI space. But more importantly, the larger focus of this toolkit is around the how. How do we implement these equity practices that will help us create these environments that are inclusive and belonging? So we're really excited to launch the beta version of the toolkit this June with the Board of Regents. And you will see more information on this moving forward and throughout 2023. These are our editors, Dr. Sharice Berry, Dr. Ballin Fonson, Dr. Susan Porres, and Dr. Orlando Curtin. And we ultimately are excited because this will lead to a DEI curriculum for residents, which was also one of the tasks that we have been charged with early on in our evolution. And then also too, we've had the opportunity such as this to engage so many of our surgeon members across the country and internationally through gram rounds and lectures and international panels. And then we've also been able to bring together a significant number of our leaders from across the college to make sure that we are aligning our strategies, not duplicating work, increasing efficiencies and effectiveness from the DEI perspective. So what's next? Once again, we will be deploying our safety and response protocol and training across the college, but we do want to make that available for our member chapters as well. So look for an invitation to participate in this training protocol that we'll be lifting up later on in 2023. And then also to, as the Institute of Medicine dictated and published back in 2001, these are our 6 domains of quality. And we can see that equity is that 6th domain. And so we are now working with DOCSI respond to the CMS health equity standards, as well as their requirements being, or recommendations being put forth by JCAHO with all of our quality programs to make sure that we are able to support our institutions in integrating equity into their everyday work such that everyone can be meet the verification standards that meet that equity domain, that 6th domain of equity through the Institute of Medicine. And then finally, we are really excited that we will be able to support our individual members who are doing the work of DEI at the member chapter level in our academic programs, as well as those who just have a genuine interest. We are going to be building out a DEI certification and recognition program that we will be launching later this year and at Clinical Congress. And we invite each one of you, if you are interested, to keep an eye out and certainly register for this program, which will be CME accredited and a longitudinal program to support those who are doing the work, not just with, again, what to do, but how to do this work effectively and from an evidence-based perspective. So with that, I will wrap up and happy to take any questions that the audience members may have. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much. And I'm glad we got the slides sorted out.
Yes.
I think DEI, yes, applause, please. Yeah. And I thank you for taking time out from a busy several days in Washington, D.C. I think DEI really speaks to some of the foundational principles of the college: excellency, advocacy, and collaboration. Questions from the audience? You've given us a lot to think about, and there's going to be more to consider as we go forward. I think, like I said, I think we're considering and pondering and look forward to continuing to work with you. So thank you so much for taking time out.
Krista, I do have a question.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, if
I'm
that's
sorry.
okay. Hi, this
President-
is,
President Albrecht has a question and we have one to follow. Yeah.
thank you. This is Roxy Albrecht from Oklahoma, and I was a little interested in the online training. And is that available now, or, and how would somebody contact the college about participating in that?
So we are, thank you, Dr. Albrecht. We are still in the beta development phase. We will be launching for beta review with the Board of Regents in June. So right before Clinical Congress, and don't worry, we're going to make a big stink from a marketing perspective about the availability of the toolkit, how to access it, what it contains, and who it's most appropriate for. So we will be sure to make concerted efforts to contact and raise awareness about its availability with each one of our chapters across the country. So we will be sure to let you know.
Certainly do appreciate that. Thank you very much. And thank you for your talk this morning.
Thank you so much.
Barb Putchguy from Mayo. And I loved your talk, and I heard it before, and I loved it each time I hear it. So I appreciate it. That was my question, because as soon as you talked about this toolkit and everything, I went on my phone and I went to the American College site. I go, where is it? Where is it?
Right.
And so it's coming. Now, are you going to offer, because we do train residents here, are you going to offer a separate program for the residents to go through, or is it going to be the same one?
So we are, and thank you so much for that question. I do repeat some of the core tenets of DEI because we know one of the key measures of adult learning is repetition. And especially in this space around the subject that most of us don't necessarily like to talk about, just grounding us in that similar, lexicon is important. So thank you for your patience on that. We are building the toolkit to be the core resource for all of our future work, which includes a curriculum for residents. We have quite a few of our ACS innovation grantees who have been working on curricula for residents, and we will be aggregating all of the best practices from across the country to make accessible to academic programs a DEI curriculum, which is curated for our residents and those in academia. So yes, that is part of our deliverable as well.
Great. Thank you so very much. Loud applause. And I know you're having fun in Washington.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great meeting.
All right. Thank you. All right. So this is kind of a bi-coastal meeting. We're talking to Washington. Let's bring it back to California. I could easily say the man who needs no introduction, but I will do a quick summary for Dr. Stewart. Native Texan, medical school at San Antonio, did his training there, went to Memphis. He has now, by my count, been in San Antonio for 30 years. I don't know when you started as a medical student, if you thought you'd be the chair of surgery. That's pretty amazing. He's founded the Southwest Texas Regional Advisory Council, started inaugural member of the National Trauma Institute, longtime involvement with the COT, culminating as chair and then medical director. Last fall, for those of you who don't know, I'm very involved in trauma, but I do know is that Dr. Stewart had the honor of presenting the Scudder Oration on Trauma, which is one of the, named lectures at Clinical Congress. Yeah, that gets applause in and of itself. Yay. And he's also a past president of the Southwestern Surgical Congress. One of Dr. Stewart's, several of his great traits are collaboration, innovation, as you can hear from all that. And I think just about everybody knows is that he has invested much effort into helping us talk about, discourse, not argue, yell, scream about firearms injury prevention. So please, loud applause, Dr. Stewart.
Thank you, Dr. Kaup. So I think everybody knows that firearm injury prevention, firearm injury is complex. It's really multifaceted. There's a lot of political polarization, but there's really a lot we can do together. I'm going to start by, how do we see the world today? It's definitely not as good as it could be. It's definitely not as good as it should be, but it's significantly better in almost every measure, human health measure, not all, but almost every human health measure. I'll just show one slide to show that. If you look from about the time my grandmother was born, there's been a steady increase in life expectancy. Prior to that time, it had been what it's been throughout recorded human history, and it's dramatically better. We often lose sight of that. The past 100 years for trauma care have seen dramatic improvements. And for the young people in the room, I want you to know that following this path, you can and you will transform the world. You can and you will. So I'm going to start with why firearm injury prevention. I would totally understand if there's folks in the audience who say, we just don't see that many people with firearm injuries. That's true for the average trauma center. But when you look at the burden of death, the overall burden of the problem, firearms are equivalent, actually greater now than motor vehicle crashes and falls. This is old data, but the reason why is because of the lethality. Firearms are more lethal than motor vehicle crashes, and motor vehicle crashes are more lethal than falls. I'm going to start with the personal perspective. These are people I know, my friends, or their family members who've been killed from intentional injury and violence. All really since we started this project with the COT. And a third of trauma surgeons surveyed in the COT had a close friend or family member who had been killed or injured related to firearms. These are some of my patients. This is the face of firearm injury. So what about the data though? If you look at intentional injury, all mechanisms, not just firearms, there's 195 deaths every single day. And about 62% of those are related to firearms. If you look at firearm from the latest data available, 2020, 45,222 people died in the US from that. And you can see the breakdown there. If you look at the trend over time, you can see that the greatest number of deaths, the greatest number of people dying related to firearms aren't suicides or self-harm. And you can see the trend for suicide and homicide in children. All of those have increased over the past 10 years. It's a significant problem. 2020 was the year that firearm injury became the #1 cause of death in US children and adolescents. Mass shootings have increased significantly since the shooting in the UT Tower in 1966, both in number and number of casualties or deaths per event. And I'm just going to remind you that this is not just a graph. It's not just an infographic. This is a CT scan of a 9-year-old. And the burden of disease is much, much greater than the deaths alone. What do I mean by that? Physical trauma often leads to psychological trauma, and psychological trauma predisposes to lifelong physical trauma and many, many, many other health problems. There's a seminal paper written by Vincent Folletti, Robert Onda, Allison Spitz, and Valerie Edwards, where they identified adverse childhood experiences and the lifelong impact for many diseases, including trauma, but also mental health, maternal health, infectious disease, chronic disease of all sorts, and high-risk behaviors. So firearm injury as a public health problem is the most neglected, one of the most neglected problems we face today. And the burden of disease is much, much greater than the deaths alone. So why? The why is simple: to prevent needless death and suffering, among our patients, our communities, our friends, and our family members. So I have a really big why. Hopefully it comes across. Why? We have a really big why. This is a slide from Kathy Barber. But how in this space really matters. How really matters. So how to approach the problem? Well, the COT, when we started this project now almost 10 years ago, basically we said we're going to adhere to 3 basic principles. We're going to treat firearm-related injury as a medical and public health problem, not a political problem. The second thing, we're going to look for evidence-based violence intervention, violence prevention programs that we can implement through our network of trauma centers. And the third thing, perhaps the most important, is we committed that we would make ourselves a forum for a civil, collegial, professional dialogue centered on what's the right thing to do for our patients. We all have stories around firearm-related injury, and we Americans tell ourselves 2 somewhat overly simplistic stories related to firearms. I'm going to talk about those. I've probably talked to more different places, more different people on both sides than probably anyone in medicine. And I've come to think of this as maybe hardwired, that actually maybe some of us are hardwired for one of these sides or the other. But I'm just going to say that we have to use both halves of our brain. We have to work together. And some of you, the corpus callosum has a function, and some of you in this room can build bridges. You can build bridges across that divide. It is doable. And the last thing I'll remind myself and us is that we should not expect from a problem that is fundamentally violence to be solved by a violent debate. We should not expect for that to happen. So it is possible to have a common story that leads to cooperation. I know it's possible. We know it's possible because the Committee on Trauma has 300, 400 very opinionated people who really care. And they're a 40-40-20 split on this issue. And we know they can work together. They've proven that that can happen hand in hand. But we kind of have to understand the two different stories that we tell ourselves. And one I call the fireman freedom story. It goes something like this: firearms are generally beneficial. They're necessary for personal protection. It's a protected constitutional right. And the person who feels that way close to heart, it's an emblem of freedom. And so you can almost synonymously substitute gun and freedom. Then there's the firearm violence narrative that goes something like this: firearms are generally harmful. They're generally not necessary in modern civil life. They decrease personal liberty because of the risk of harm in our homes and on our streets. And for that person who holds that close to their heart, they're an emblem of violence. So for that person, gun control translates into violence control. For the other person, gun control translates into freedom control. So it is possible to have a common story, a common narrative. It goes something like this: firearm ownership is a constitutionally protected right, but we have a huge death and disability problem related to it. We can significantly improve that by committing to work together to do 2 things: work to address the underlying root causes of violence while simultaneously working to make firearm ownership as safe as reasonably possible. So we surveyed the whole college. I'm not going to go through the whole survey. It would take a long time. But the bottom line is there's the respondents are in strongly support the ACS addressing firearm injury prevention. And there's tremendous room for consensus in that survey. So how to do this? Engage groups at risk as part of the solution. Partner with them and empower those partnership with data and tools. So there's lots of things we can do together. I think one of the most successful things, 2 successful things we've done, are engage firearm owners as part of the solution, not part of the problem. Oftentimes firearm owners are looked as part of the problem. We engage them as part of the solution, just as we would do bicycle riders in a bicycle helmet campaign. The FAST recommendations, this is all open access. I highly recommend everyone read this paper. Read this paper, the FAST work group recommendations. And the second really key thing was, how do we address root causes of injury? How do we get to root causes, closer to the root cause? And that's the role of the I Save work group, improving social determinants to attenuate violence. I believe if you go anywhere in the world where you find poverty, inequity, and poor health outcomes, you will find structural violence, and you will find a sense of hopelessness in the population. So the I Save work group is specifically tasked with addressing the root causes, and they've done amazing work. And they have 3 or 4 very simple things that we can all work on. Implementing trauma-informed care in our trauma centers, investing in marginalized communities, not government investment, but health system investment in those communities. Integrating social care into medical care. What that means is hospital and community-based violence intervention, and advocating for these 3 things. It's the most neglected health problem in the US. So I would ask us all to become advocates for this. What's it take to be an advocate? Advocates are committed. They're willing to change the status quo. They're willing to endure challenge and hardship, but they also have a desire to work with others to build coalitions big enough to affect change, to build bridges across different groups, and they have a bias for action. The ACS, the American College of Surgeons, in partnership with pretty much every major professional organization, has done just that. This was the second summit around firearm injury prevention. Kudos to those of you who've led this, but it really does make a difference. So what are things that anyone could do? Trauma surgeon, non-trauma surgeon. Well, we could lead with a positive, hopeful worldview, an accurate worldview, but positive and hopeful. Hopefulness, not hopelessness. The world has tons of communication around how horrible things are and how hopeless it is. Lead with a sense of hope. Promote positive childhood experiences in everything we do. Implement trauma-informed care in our trauma centers. Engage your communities. One easy way to engage communities for the trauma community is to teach Stop the Bleed, and to engage them, and take a friends helping friends approach, not an enemy against enemy approach, and adhere to the common narrative. It really does work, and advocate for those policies that I Save and the FAST work group have come up with. So there's lots of partnership opportunities. And I'm just going to wrap up by saying that there's been major improvements in trauma care over the past century. It's our moral obligation actually to continue that. But our advocacy is critical. We have to move beyond complacency, and we have to work together. We have to work together to do those things, because cooperation and communication save lives. And your leadership, our leadership skills are critical to achieving that goal. Thank you. I can take
Oh.
questions off.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna have a questions afterwards, because we're bumping into time, but we want to give Dr. Brandt her full time. So don't worry about that. We're gonna give you full time here. So Dr. Mary Brandt is a professor and internationally recognized pediatric surgeon. She's previously been the program director and vice chair of education in the Department of Surgery and the senior associate dean of medical affairs or affairs at Baylor University. She's currently a professor of surgery at Tulane University in the Department of Surgery. And Dr. Brandt's going to enlighten us on wellness.
Oh, my goodness. The wellness speech is the only thing standing between us and lunch. This is, I think I should just say, be kind, be safe, be well, and sit down. But I actually do have some things to say, and I'm not let, and I will try to make it brief, but I too am going to talk about some really hard things, but like my dear friend, Dr. Stewart, I'm going to end up with some hopeful things. So I want to first acknowledge we're standing on the unceded land of the Chumash people. So this is not a talk that's going to start with objectives. What I'm going to do is start by bearing witness to what we've all experienced. That's something we don't do enough. So let's bear witness to some of the things that have made these years of the pandemic particularly hard for us. There's no question that COVID is top of that list for us. It arrived with a fury, right? We canceled our elective cases, our workflows changed. We don't talk about it much, but we were frightened, all of us. We were scared we'd get it. We were scared we'd take it home to our family. We didn't know if we'd die or be sick or what would happen. But we had a covenant with our patients, all physicians do, that we are okay being exposed to things. So we didn't talk about that much, but it really affected us. And then we had to go to work to take care of these patients with this very complicated and devastating disease in an environment where somehow this became so politicized that common sense public health things were being ignored. And I watched the 16-year-old football player who actually begged his parents to get a vaccine die on ECMO in our ICU. We have to bear witness to what that does for us and to us. Political interference is something we need to call out by name and bear witness to this. We are living in a time where somehow it has become accepted that politicians can pass laws that fly in the face of evidence-based medicine. No matter what your personal views are, we all suffer when political rhetoric supplants evidence-based care for public health issues like COVID, like gun safety, pregnancy, and gender dysphoria. This was 1 week ago. I don't know if you all heard Jason Smith's press conference. I think we all did, but I think he was speaking for all of us. I'll tell you personally, I am weary. It's more than tired. I am weary. There's only so many times that you can walk into a room and tell someone that someone they love isn't coming home. It just breaks your heart. The EMR, which was discussed earlier. Now, there are some benefits to the EMR, and the systems are getting better. It improves communication, but oh my goodness, at what a cost? And a cost that disproportionately has been placed on physicians. There are data that show that the EMR adds around 16 additional minutes to each patient encounter. When you do the math, that means there's no way we can do our work at work. We all end up taking it home. It's built into the system. It's not a bug, it's a feature. Here's the real issue with this, though, and it's the one we have to bear witness to, and I stand here to do it. Our EMR is different than the EMR in every other country because our EMR is not just about patient care. In fact, it's primarily about billing. If you look at this graph, the green bars and the median for the United States, which is in green, is about 90 minutes. Every other country, the median is in yellow. Look at the extra time that we spend in the EMR compared to other physicians in the world. All of this has led to a huge growth in administrators in medicine. And we've shifted in one generation, maybe just slightly more than one generation, from completely physician-controlled practices in hospitals to corporate models of providing medical care. And here's what I'm bearing witness to. That has marginalized us. Now that's an important concept, and I want to spend a little bit of time here, just a couple of slides to explain something very important. For there to be a margin, there has to be a center. And that sounds like it should be obvious, right? but it's one of these assumptions that we probably don't think about. The center and the margins are defined by our individual social locations. So the center in our hospitals is the C-suite, right? The center in our society is defined by a variety of social locations. And in the United States, the dominant social location is white, less than 60 years old, cisgendered, male, born in the United States, heterosexual, and able-bodied. Now you look around this room, or you look around any group that we're in, and you probably immediately can recognize it is a tiny percentage of people that have all 7 of those dominant locations. Everyone in this room, I have 3. Most of you have at least 1, probably 2. Some have many more than that. Why is that important? It's a concept called intersectionality. And what intersectionality teaches us is that all marginalization is connected. So when you are in one of those locations that's not dominant, when you have 2, it's not twice as bad. If you're a Black woman, you experience far more marginalization than a white woman or a Black man. It's not just additive. That's what intersectionality teaches us. And here we are. Because no matter what our personal social location is, no matter how many non-dominant parts of our social location we're dealing with at work every day, all of us are circling around this change in medical administration that has now marginalized us. And that, all of these things that I just bore witness to, all of these stresses and that marginalization have placed us in a situation where we experience significant moral distress. That's defined as being in a system or situation that makes it impossible to do what we know is right. That's moral distress. And when you experience it over and over again, you progress into a form of moral injury that really needs healing. Dr. Graham, who I'll quote again in a minute on this book on moral injuries, says that it's the burden of harm and the diminishment of vitality that arises in individuals and communities when we or others violate our moral compasses. Now, the bold is mine because I am convinced that the epidemic of burnout is primarily an epidemic of moral injury more than anything else. But we're surgeons. So you can't bear witness to all that harm and to that injury. We can't bear witness to what's quoted as 400 physicians a year who kill themselves, but we know it's probably closer to 600, 700, 800 because of all the unreported deaths. That's huge. What are we going to do about this amount of suffering and death? What tools are we going to use? So I'm going to give you a tool to go on our metaphorical back table in dealing with this. It's called contextual creativity, and it comes from Dr. Graham's book, who I mentioned before. And it's got 4 steps, and it's deceptively simple, but incredibly powerful when you use it. So we start with naming it. Should say name it, sorry. And I named it. That's what I bore witness to. Those are the things that we're dealing with: COVID, political interference, gun violence, EMR, and marginalization. Then we frame it. And here's what that means. Framing what we name is the basis for changing the power of the past. Naming alone is not enough. When we frame what we name in actionable and benevolent terms, we begin to gain the power to resist, change, and heal. Now that sounds great. And I think we just heard an example of that from what Dr. Stewart is trying to do in building his consensus and coalitions, reframing what's important and leading you to action. But let me explain this with a story that I think will illustrate it a little bit better. I was part of a committee at our hospital that was helping to design a new coffee area for people for wellness. And it had all kinds of wonderful things and nice seating. And it was a little bit away from the hospital, but not too far. And they commissioned an artist to paint a painting. And the artist came back with this beautiful drawing of an oak tree like this to represent the centuries and centuries, millennia of people that had been on that land and the beauty of the land. And we all went, oh, that's great. And then one of our colleagues, who's a Black physician, looked at all of us and said, I see something very different when I see that tree. So we reframe it. That oak tree, that painting of that oak tree was a reminder of lynching and would be a reminder of lynching to many in our community. And that was not acceptable to our community. So that leads to the actionable and benevolent action. The artist went back and started a different painting. The American College of Surgeons Wellbeing Group, which I'm currently chair of, is something that has tried to take this tool and use it to think about how do we move the needle on something that we've been experiencing. This burnout epidemic has been going on for decades, and it just keeps getting worse, right? So I had a tennis coach once that said, always change a losing game, never change a winning game. Okay, so we needed a different strategy. So this is the strategy, this creative context, contextual creativity, that we decided to use. So let me just kind of go through it. We named it, and here's what we said, what we need to know to go forward. Surgeon well-being is not about resilience, grit, or any other individual deficit. It's about a broken system that measures and promotes things that are not fully in alignment with the values of practicing surgeons. But we also recognize that leaders and managers in healthcare systems do not wake up in the morning, look in the mirror, and decide, I'm going to go to work and hurt everybody that works for me. We also recognized that there is no incentive for healthcare systems to spend money, time, or effort on changes to promote surgeon well-being. And so we framed it. We framed it this way. Again, looking for those actionable and benevolent things that we could do. There is no malicious intent to create harm for surgeons in healthcare systems. However, there is a lack of communication and shared values between surgeons and administrators, a deficit that contributes to significant harm, suffering, and even death. So that has led us, go back for a second, that's led us to a variety of things, of benevolent, actionable items. That I'm going to share 3 of those items with you. And the first is this. We're moving forward to sponsor a palaver. I'm going to come back to that word because I know you don't know what it means, between the leaders of the American College of Surgeons and the American Hospital Association. So what do we usually do in these situations? We've got this us and them. It's the same thing Dr. Stewart talked about, right? We get in a room and yell at each other. So what's a palaver and why is it different? It's a very antique word. Well, Merriam-Webster defines it as a long parley or conversation between persons of different cultures or levels of sophistication. But what's important here, what this is not a meeting with an agenda. It's not linear decision-making or a task force. Dr. Graham describes this as change that is received as a result of attentive living, and I would add listening, rather than as something to orchestrate based on analysis and conviction. Minds are changed by data, but hearts are changed by stories. And so we have to get to a point where we can develop the kinds of conversations and relationships that allow us to share the stories that can change the trajectory. The second thing you heard about briefly, we have created a coalition of as many surgical organizations as we could find. Again, this is not going to be a typical agenda create works. This is another meeting where we're going to do small groups and best practices and what policies should we consider and what research should we do. We have invited 66 organizations, and if there's more we find, we'll invite them too. I think we're up to 50 something that have accepted, and the first meeting will be shortly on the 26th. And then this, the most important thing, because there aren't any incentives, we are working with all the partners we need to in the American College of Surgeons to ensure that metrics to measure surgeon well-being become part of every ACS accreditation and verification. So you saw the list of 10 and the 2 they're adding. What that means is if you're a trauma center, you're going to have to prove you have the committees. You're going to have to see how fast people respond. And oh, by the way, here's the 3 metrics in surgeon wellness, and you didn't meet those as well. So that's a delinquent. You're delinquent in that. So we've got to figure out what those metrics are, and we want to hear from you. And that's what the survey is about. So please, please, please fill it out and make sure everyone else does too, because we think this is going to be a very powerful way to change the culture of surgeon well-being in our hospitals. So thank you very much for your attention. I'll look forward to hearing from any of you if you have any suggestions or comments.
Excellent, thank you. We do have a little bit of time for questions, or we can do offline questions. We'll take one on the floor, and then we'll have offline after.
Can you all hear me?
Mhm.
Yeah, I have a question for Dr. Stewart from his presentation. My name is Sue McLean. I'm from El Paso, Texas. I'm a trauma general surgeon, SICU director. I have a question regarding the workings of the ACS to combat gun violence. I was wondering what is the plan for reaching out to other stakeholders? For example, reaching out to organizations that combat drug trafficking, which has been associated with gun violence. I know the DEA has a program in cities, they're not taking care of health, but I think, say, for example, if you look at a Haddon matrix, a pre-event thing that could be done is cut down on drug violence. That's one way to reach out. The other thing I was wondering, has the ACS thought about working with other organizations in a multidisciplinary manner? Because when we treat gunshot wounds, we're not alone. There's a whole bunch of people helping us. There's EM physicians, many times anesthesiologists, a whole cadre of nurses. And I was wondering if we made this kind of movement more multidisciplinary, could we gain more political traction?
So is this working? Yeah. So it's one of the core tenets. I didn't mention it. It didn't have enough time. But one of the tenets of the ACS approach is to engage all the relevant policy stakeholders. That's not the DEA, that's a government organization. But actually the COT is met, and I think continues to meet, but is met with, for example, across the spectrum, has met with the NRA, maintained ongoing dialogue with the NRA, with the Brady campaign, with Moms Demand, with all the relevant stakeholder groups across that spectrum. And from a multidisciplinary point of view, the summit had 47 of the leading organizations, and not just the trauma organizations, which would be, but all the trauma organizations, including paramedicine and including emergency medicine, but across the entire health and public health spectrum. And the first summit even included the ABA. So the short answer is it's really important, and the ACS is committed to that. It does take time. It takes a lot of talking, but it's a key part of it. Yeah.
All right,
Thank
off
you,
to
Ron.
lunch. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brandt.
Everyone, enjoy your afternoon, enjoy your evening, and we'll reconvene tomorrow morning. We're working on getting the sun turned on. We haven't quite found the button yet, but we're working.